As I stood at the sink, scrubbing dishes, my husband Eric suddenly dropped a bombshell. Sophia, I want a divorce. My hands froze, submerged in soapy water. But why? I stammered, completely blindsided by his blunt statement. I'm about to inherit $6 million, he continued, as if we were discussing the weather. That's a lot of money, and I don't want to share it with you. I stared at him, trying to absorb his words. What does that have to do with the divorce? Eric sighed, leaning against the counter. The truth is, I've only stayed with you for the money. Your salary isn't much, but it helped pay some bills. Once I get that inheritance, I won't need you anymore. I want to live stress-free, and that means being alone. So let's just end this. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but in that moment, I realized this was my chance to break free from the exhausting life I'd been leading. Fine, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. If you're coming into that much money, sell the house. It'll pay off the mortgage and we can both move on. Eric looked taken aback by my calm acceptance. Maybe he expected a fight or tears, but I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I walked into the living room, grabbed some papers, and slammed them onto the table. This was my moment to say goodbye to the man who had drained me emotionally for far too long. My name is Sophia. I'm a preschool teacher who adores kids, and I met Eric through a mutual friend. He's 2 years older than me, and for the first few years, we were happy. We bought a house, talked about having children, and for a while, it felt like life was headed in the right direction. But everything changed after we got married. Eric's personality took a sharp turn. He became obsessed with money, and that obsession clouded every conversation. Before we tied the knot, he used to admire my job, praising the work I did, but those compliments quickly faded. All you do is play with kids all day, Sophia, he would sneer, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm out here busting my butt while you have it easy. His hurtful comments became routine, and he started calling me a freeloader despite my efforts and dedication as a daycare teacher. Every child is unique, and the responsibility for their safety and well-being is immense. But Eric never saw it that way. No matter how I tried to explain, he refused to understand, and his words cut deeply. We had been married for 8 years, and the reason we didn't have children was because of him. If you've got time to think about babies, he'd say, you should be working more. Don't even think about quitting your job just because you want a child. We have bills to pay, Sophia. Every time I brought up the idea of starting a family, Eric would shut me down so harshly that I eventually stopped mentioning it altogether. Sure, he made more money than I did, but the difference wasn't significant. Still, he acted as if he were leagues above me, as if I contributed nothing to our life together. I took pride in my work, but his constant belittling was devastating. His cruel words cut deep, and too often, I found myself crying alone after he went to bed. Recently, Eric had been talking more about wanting to be alone. I could easily live on my own, he'd say. I'm only sticking around because it's convenient for now. I couldn't grasp why he always looked down on me. It didn't make sense. Even though he was putting in more overtime, I knew it wasn't translating into more income. I kept a close eye on our finances, and his salary remained stagnant. Maybe if he worked harder, I wouldn't have to pick up the slack, he'd snap at me. You should be grateful for what I do. But I wasn't buying it. The numbers didn't lie. When I pointed this out, he would fly into a rage. Do you know who's keeping this lifestyle afloat? I could leave you anytime, Sophia. Don't forget that. His words felt like a threat, and the tension between us grew thicker with each passing day. He hadn't been like this before we got married, and I found myself wondering how things had gotten so bad. The final straw came during a visit to his parents for Thanksgiving. His mother, with her usual warmth, offered us tea and asked, "It's been 8 years since you two got married, right? Sophia, you used to say you wanted kids. Have you thought about it? You're not getting any younger." I was just about to speak when Eric cut in. "Mom, we've already decided we're not having kids." I froze, stunned by his words. That wasn't true at all. "What?" I whispered. "Yeah," Eric continued, ignoring my confusion. "Sophia hates the idea of taking care of kids. She gets enough of that at work." Before I could correct him, his mom nodded and said, "Well, if that's what you've both decided, then that's fine." In the car on the way home, I confronted him. "Why would you lie like that? I've always wanted children." He shrugged. "We can't afford it, Sophia. You don't make enough money, so you don't get a say." I sat in silence, completely crushed. At work, even the children sensed something was off. One little girl in my class, Emma, came up to me and asked, "Miss Sophia, why do you look sad today?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to worry you." "I'm fine," I said, giving Emma a gentle pat on the head. Emma was always quiet and thoughtful, mature beyond her years. She wasn't one to seek attention, but her kindness always shone through. "You're not fine, Miss Sophia," Emma said softly, her eyes filled with concern. You're usually much happier. I don't like seeing you sad, Emma said, concern etching her young features. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me that a child as sweet as Emma was worried about my troubles. I forced a smile, not wanting her to bear my burdens. It's very kind of you to care, Emma, but really I'm okay. Emma wasn't convinced. Maybe my daddy can help you. He's a superhero, he helps a lot of people. He's picking me up tomorrow, and I'll tell him about your problem. Despite the heaviness in my heart, Emma's enthusiasm made me chuckle. Her father didn't usually pick her up. Her mother did most days, but Emma mentioned that her dad was coming because her mom was busy and she was determined to introduce us. I felt uneasy about sharing my personal issues with a stranger, but I couldn't refuse her excitement. The next day arrived, and sure enough, Emma's father showed up to pick her up. He was polite and well-spoken, just as I remembered from the school's entrance ceremony. "Thank you for taking care of Emma," he said with a warm smile. "She talks about you all the time and seems to really enjoy her time here." "Oh, it's my pleasure. Emma is such a sweet, thoughtful girl," I replied, feeling a little awkward given the circumstances. I didn't feel comfortable discussing my problems with him, even though Emma had insisted. My situation wasn't something that could be casually mentioned. But Emma was persistent. "Daddy, Miss Sophia is worried about something. Can you help her?" Her father glanced at me, sensing my hesitation. "I understand if you're not ready to talk about it," he said gently. "But if you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out. My daughter is very concerned, and we'd love to assist in any way we can." He handed me a business card. As I glanced at it and noticed his title, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was fate, or maybe I had just reached my breaking point, but I decided then and there that I wouldn't be a victim any longer. I was going to take control of my life, and I would make Eric regret ever treating me this way. Just as I was making plans to move forward, Eric approached me again, casually tossing another curveball into my day. "Hey, how about we finally go through with that divorce?" he said nonchalantly, as if we were simply discussing what to have for dinner. It had been a long time since we sat down for a meal together, and hearing him bring this up now, especially in the middle of dinner, was jarring. My hands froze in the soapy water as I turned to face him, unsure of what to say. Eric seemed to interpret my silence as shock, grinning smugly as if he held all the power. "I know you don't like it, but my mind's made up," Eric said, his tone dismissive. "Why now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "A huge sum of money is coming my way. Want to know how much?" $6 million, he boasted, clearly relishing the moment. I hadn't asked for the details, but he continued. "I only stayed with you for the money. Yours wasn't much, but it was something. Now that I have this money, I don't need you anymore. Let's end this. You've had your time freeloading off me." Fury bubbled beneath the surface, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Where did you get all that money?" I asked, even though there were a million other things I wanted to say. "That's none of your business. We're strangers now," Eric replied dismissively. "Fine," I said, my resolve hardening. "Let's get the divorce over with then." He looked surprised by how quickly I agreed, perhaps expecting more resistance, but I was ready to be rid of him. "I don't plan on living in this small house anymore," he continued arrogantly. "With $6 million, I'm buying a mansion. I'll sell the house too." "That's fine," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'll find a place to live, and you can use the money to pay off the mortgage." "Yeah, I'll take care of it, I guess. It's the least I can do." His smugness was unbearable, and I decided it was time to put my plan into action. I busied myself with packing, preparing for this new chapter in my life. When the divorce proceedings were nearly finalized, I arranged a meeting with Eric to discuss the final details. "I'm leaving the mortgage payments to you," I said, sliding a document across the table. "I don't want any confusion later. So I've drafted an agreement that outlines everything. Please sign it." Eric flipped through the papers but suddenly paused. "Wait a minute. What's this about alimony? Why should I pay you anything? If anything, you should be paying me. You don't even work full-time." I stayed calm, laying out more documents in front of him. "You thought you could hide everything from me, didn't you? You've been so naive, Eric." His face turned pale as he glanced at the photos I placed in front of him, images of him with another woman, laughing together, arm in arm. "She's just a junior collie," he stammered. "This doesn't mean anything." "Really?" I asked, holding up another photo that showed Eric and the same woman entering a hotel together. His eyes widened in panic, but he wasn't ready to give in. "These are fake photos. They can be manipulated these days. You can't fool me with this." I sighed deeply, having anticipated his reaction. "This isn't just about pictures, Eric. I have more evidence than you can imagine," I said calmly. "You're not walking away from this easily." Eric's confidence began to falter as I revealed the extent of what I had gathered against him. This was just the beginning. My quiet strength would soon become his downfall. I think they'll be here soon, I added just as the doorbell rang. Eric's face strained a color, confusion, and worry flickering in his eyes. He had no idea what was about to unfold. I opened the door and stepped aside, ushering in two people. "This is my attorney," I announced, guiding them into the living room. "These photos and documents were collected by a private detective agency. There's no way they could be fake. If you're unsure, should I call them right now?" I spoke with such calmness that it rattled him. "Pleasure to meet you. I'm Sophia's attorney," my lawyer chimed in, flashing a confident smile. "From now on, we'll handle all divorce proceedings through me. Do you have any questions about these photos? I'd be happy to explain everything." Eric, who had been projecting bravado, began to panic. The truth was out. His claims of working late and putting in overtime had been lies. The detective agency had revealed that he was leaving work on time, sneaking away to spend his nights with his mistress. Suddenly, everything made sense. When he had started talking about wanting to be alone, it hadn't just been his usual selfishness. It was a ploy to spend more time with her. Now that his affair was in the open, he had nowhere to hide. Emma's father had been right to step in to help me. I hadn't realized then how much influence he wielded. He wasn't just a supportive parent but the CEO of a major company with connections to top-tier lawyers and detectives. His daughter's claim that her dad was a superhero was spot on. He had assembled a team that exposed all of Eric's lies. Eric attempted to regain his composure. "You want alimony? Fine. I've got $6 million. I can afford it. Just get out of here. I never want to see you again." I stayed calm, methodically packing my things, ready to move on to the next chapter of my life. "I would have left regardless, Eric. If there's anything else in the future, we'll handle it through the lawyer. Don't come to me directly. Who would ever want to see you again?" He spat, his pride still intact, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to be so prepared. Silently, I gathered the last of my belongings and walked out of the house that had once felt like home. As I stepped outside, I wondered how someone could remain so arrogant even at the end. Eric had no idea how close he was to losing everything. For the next few months, I settled into my new life in a quiet apartment where I could finally breathe without the constant tension. The adjustment wasn't easy, but with Eric gone, the stress that had loomed over me like a dark cloud dissipated. The relief was undeniable. Just as I began to embrace the peace, Eric showed up at my door, pounding loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "Please, Sophia, you've got to listen to me," he yelled. Reluctantly, I opened the door to see his disheveled figure standing there. "What do you want?" I asked coldly, making it clear I had no interest in his excuses. He forced a smile, glancing around my apartment. "You've got a nice place here. There's plenty of room for two. Maybe I could move in? We could make one of these rooms mine." I stared at him, disbelief etched on my face. "Are you serious? There's no way I'm living with a stranger." "Come on, Sophia, don't be so harsh. We were married once, remember? There's no reason we can't be together again," he said, his voice dripping with false charm. "We're strangers now, Eric, legally, so stop acting like we're still something." "Don't talk like that, Sophia. You're scaring me," he said, his voice wavering. "I've realized that I need you in my life. We can start over. You were happy with me, right?" I scoffed. "You were living in a mansion with your mistress, Eric. I was nothing but a convenience to you. Why would I take you back?" To my shock, his face twisted, and he began to cry. "Sophia, I never actually had $6 million, he sobbed. "I thought I won the lottery, but I was wrong. I misread the numbers. I jumped to conclusions, thinking I could leave you, but it was all a mistake." I stood there, stunned. "What are you even talking about?" "I quit my job," he wailed, desperation fully on display. "I thought I won, so I badmouthed my boss and quit. But the numbers were wrong, Sophia. I'm ruined. I thought I could do whatever I wanted with that money, but now I have nothing." I stared at him, utterly speechless. This was the man I once thought I'd spend my life with. Blinded by greed and arrogance, he had thrown everything away without a second thought. "I ended things with her," Eric continued, as if that would change anything. "I realized I need you, Sophia. Please let's start over. I know you still love me deep down." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Eric, I don't know what world you're living in, but it's not this one. I'm done with you. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." "Please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "Help me. I'm broke and I need you. I can't go back to my job, and without money, I have nothing." His words meant nothing to me. There was no sympathy left in my heart for him. He had dug his own grave and was now trying to pull me back into the mess he had created. "You should have thought about that before you treated me like dirt," I said, my voice steady. "This conversation is over. Leave." As I watched Eric stumble out of my apartment, I felt a profound sense of closure. This was the final chapter of our story, and for the first time, I felt free. I don't have any money, and she stopped contacting me, Eric muttered, his voice filled with defeat. It seemed his mistress had abandoned him, and I wasn't surprised. Who would want a man who was divorced, jobless, and now homeless? That's why I can't pay my loan, he continued, desperation creeping into his tone. I don't have anywhere to live, Sophia. You're my only hope. I remained calm, though inside I was boiling with frustration. I told you I don't care. If you stay here any longer, I'll take action. Don't forget the agreement you signed when we divorced. If you break your promise, I can claim 5 times the alimony. Eric's face twisted in anger as he raised his hand. For a split second, I thought he might actually hit me. Is that what you're going to do now? I asked. If you lay a hand on me, I'll call the cops immediately. You'll be charged with assault, and this apartment complex has security cameras. Even if you run, they'll catch your face. His expression turned pale, and he lowered his hand, knowing he couldn't win this one. Get out now, or I'll report you for trespassing, I added, my voice steady and firm. At the mention of a report, Eric's panic grew. Without another word, he fled, and I heard him tumble down the stairs. I didn't even bother to check. I simply shut the door and locked it behind me, finally closing that chapter of my life for good. Since that day, Eric never returned. Later, my in-laws came to apologize, genuinely shocked by the situation and clearly unaware of how far their son had fallen. When I asked how Eric was doing, they explained that he had fractured his leg while fleeing that day and had been hospitalized for 2 months. The medical bills added up quickly, and with his mortgage and alimony payments hanging over him, Eric found himself in a tough spot. He tried begging his former boss to take him back and let him work from home, but it was too late. He had burned that bridge when he quit so rudely, and his old employer had no interest in rehiring him. In the meantime, Eric's parents had to step in to cover his alimony payments and mortgage. It was clear he had a difficult road ahead, but he had no one to blame but himself. Once my life had settled down, I decided to visit Emma's house. Her father had been instrumental in helping me turn my situation around, and I wanted to thank him personally. When I told him everything had been resolved, he smiled warmly. I'm glad to hear that, Sophia. I've always wanted to meet you in person since Emma talks about you all the time. I didn't expect it to be under these circumstances, though. All I did was make a few calls, he added humbly. I'm just happy everything worked out. Emma, standing nearby, beamed up at me. I'm so happy to see Miss Sophia smiling again. Her innocent kindness was truly heartwarming. In many ways, Emma had been the catalyst for this entire journey. Without her, I might never have met her father and might still be stuck in that toxic relationship. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. As I stood there reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized how my job as a preschool teacher had shaped my strength to reclaim my life. My husband had looked down on me for my profession, but it was because of it, and the people I met along the way, that I had found my strength. Now I loved my job more than ever. It wasn't just a job, it was part of who I was. Because of it, I felt stronger, more confident, and more determined to keep doing my best, for myself and for the children like Emma who looked up to me. The future felt bright again, and I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready for them.